Okay, I have my son's 2010 Ford Focus, SEL, I think. It's the deluxe model. It's got all the features on it. It's got a shake or a vibration in it. I've seen this. You can see other YouTube videos. People talk about the car shaking when the engine's running, and this car actually shakes. I was going to sell the car, and the people who was going to buy the car actually noticed that it shaked and it made them nervous, so that I did some research and found out that it looks like the motor mount's bad. So let me show you what that motor mount looks like. Here's the motor mount in question right here. And the motor mount, if you look in there, it actually has some cracks around the edge right there, and it's really soft, or like it's hollow, and the thing is shifted, the pin is shifted sideways in there a little bit, and I can tell. So it looks bad to me, so I'm ordered a new part and I'm gonna replace it. Here's the new part, and I bought it on Amazon. Cost me about a little less than 35 bucks. Got to remove this canister right here because of that bolt there, and I got to remove that bolt, these two, and there's another one right there, and then get it out. And I have my floor jack here that I'm going to put in there underneath the oil pan or some part of the engine to support the front of the engine here, while I take the load off of that bracket and that motor mount so that I can swap it out. So that's what I'm doing. These are 10mm bolts here. Remove these two. Removing this hose off of the radiator, just sort of wiggle it around and work it off slowly. There you go. Well, to remove this now, there we go. I'm going to place the jack. I'm going to support right on this piece right here with the jack. Getting an 18mm deep socket, and preferably an extension. This one's a little bit long, but it'll work fine, to pop loose these two nuts right here on top. You can see here that the stud is removed from the head. Well, that's not going to be a problem. I'll Loctite that when I put that back in. I've located registration marks right here because there's quite a bit of clearance around those bolts, so I put a little registration mark, so if you sight straight down you can see that that's lined up. And then I also put a registration mark around this end of the bracket, because this has a pretty large opening as well to accommodate a fair amount of movement, so I just want to put it back in the original spot. But this is a 15mm deep socket for these bolts or nuts down here. This one's also a 15mm. This wobble-headed ratchet is pretty nice. It's an old S&K product. Interesting enough, all that is a stud. Oh, that's a bolt. I thought that was a nut. Interesting. Oh well. Now with all the bolts and everything, this is loose. Not quite sure how to get it out of here, but it'll come out somehow. Yeah, it'll come out. I get both hands free. And you can see where the boot's all cracked right there. And even the boot up here is cracked around the top. Doesn't look good. It definitely feels a lot weaker than the new one. You can see how the clearance between here and here is a lot farther than here. It's as if though this one has sunk down and you can see that these rubber bumpers right here have been sitting on that aluminum right there. And that right there, when that touches, that will send the vibration from the engine into the body of the car. You can see where it's been rubbing on both sides. Where this one is spaced up a lot farther, so the rubber actually supports the engine. So this is definitely going to fix the problem, I'm pretty sure. And this one's really loose in here. It's really easy to wiggle around. This one's really stiff. The engine was sitting on the frame. Well, getting the motor mount out of there was a bit of a chore. The air conditioning hose here, I was able to actually lift up on and give myself a little bit more room to wiggle it around. It just took me about 2 minutes or so and messing around with the angles and playing around with it, and it came out of there. Put that right around there. Pull up on the hose a little bit. There we go. See that? A little bit of thread locker on this stud, so when I put it back in, it'll be held in there well. I torqued both of these nuts down first because these are close fitting holes to the studs, and then I will move the engine around a little bit to line up my registration marks for these bolts. Put the lower 3 bolts in, but don't tighten them down until the position is correct. Okay, I got my studs back in and my registration mark is pretty well lined up. Here and there, this one's just ever so slightly off, but I'm okay with that. All the bolts are tight. So now I'm ready to put the radiator reservoir back in. Well, there we have it. Everything's back in place. Put the coolant reservoir back in. I went ahead and labeled today's date down on when I did it. That'll be helpful for, I found it to be helpful in a lot of things. I date a lot of stuff. And if somebody buys the car, they'll be able to see a date and they'll assume that, hey, that motor mount was replaced then. So it just might be helpful to somebody else even. So that's it. I'm going to start it up, see if she vibrates or what it feels like. Just took the car out for a test drive, and replacing that motor mount up front definitely solved the vibration problem. Pretty easy job. Took me about 15 minutes, maybe at the most. So if your car vibrates, if you have a Focus and it sort of shakes and vibrates, that's the problem. Catch you later.